get started. So I am Jonathan Chen. Oh, looks like Vincent is having a little bit of internet trouble, so he'll join in a minute. Um, but I'm Jonathan Chen. I am the managing director of AI strategy. So I lead the AI strategy practice for the Americas here at Board of Innovation. Really happy that everyone can join us today. I think we have a good few topics to talk about. That's very, very top of mind for a lot of different organizations that are looking into AI right now. They're going on their own AI journey and they're trying to mature. Now, they're trying to transform, but there's a lot of traps on that journey. So we want to talk about some of those traps today and figure out how we can kind of clear the weeds and clear the path so that we can hit the transformation and the level of change that you as an organization want. So glad that everybody's here. Very happy. Let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to talk about AI transformation, and we're going to give you some lessons for the trenches, right? I'm Jonathan Chen. I lead the AI practice here in the Americas. I'm a managing director. Before this, I was in Fortune 500. I led AI strategy at Northwestern Mutual, which is a big 170-year-old life insurance company. For those of you that aren't in the U.S., very, very big company that's been around for a very long time. Led AI strategy there, and then before that, I led AI strategy at Cigna, the health insurance company, for about 3 years. Before that, I was in intelligent automation startups and then in consulting for a long time. So my past 10 years has been focused on automation and transforming work. Now, back in early days of automation, that wasn't AI, right? That was just workflow automation. And these days, it is AI. But the fundamental parts of what it is that we're trying to transform and change at an organization for work, that remains the same, right? And so you can kind of, through the last 10 years, you kind of have these rolling lessons of what to do, what not to do, what to avoid, and what to really accelerate. So Vincent, I think has joined, or is taking a minute to join, but he'll introduce himself when he joins on. Yep, we will send you slides. But that is a quick introduction of me. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to cover 4 topics, right? 4 sections. The first one is we're going to talk a little bit about this maturity model and how you can get trapped in that maturity model, and therefore what does transformation actually look like when you can ride that model well. Second, Vincent is going to give you 5 patterns on what AI leaders do differently than laggards. Then we'll show you how to get started, and then we'll do a little Q&A at the end. So pretty tight, the topic really is how do you mature along this journey as you kind of take on more and more and broader AI topics, and then actually how do you transform your organization with a good enough degree of change so that you actually are transforming. You're not shaving 10% off of cost. You're not shaving 10%. You're not finding 10% more efficiency. You are fundamentally transforming the way that you do work, the way that you think about work, and the way that you engage with your customers and partners, right? So that's what we're going to cover today. Let's get right into it, I think. So part 1, let's talk about the maturity trap and what does transformation actually look like. This is a maturity curve. You guys have seen many maturity curves before on many different topics, and this is no exception, that there is a path to take for AI. You have to generally crawl before you walk, and you have to walk before you run. Even if you don't do each one for long, you still have to go through these things and give it enough effort and time on each one of these phases so that you can hit the next one. Amazon AWS did not flip a switch and get to run. Duolingo did not flip a switch and get to run. Klarna didn't flip a switch and get to run. They had fundamentally the culture and the organizational tenets in place to be able to make this journey, right? So let's talk about this. What you hear these days a lot is talk around the ROI of AI. Now, what's very interesting is that, obviously a month ago, MIT came out with the report that said 95% of companies are extracting zero value from their AI programs. That's probably true, but I think the hot take that, if you wanted a nuanced take here, is really to question, well, what is value, right? Because you cannot, because for the level of maturity that you actually should be looking for different kinds of ROI and different kinds of value. So if you're just starting on this journey, you've put, a couple $100,000 or euros into into the program, and you're expecting 1 to 20x return on run, of course you're going to fail that measurement, right? And so if you think about a maturity model of growing along this and maturing and building the organizational muscle around AI transformation, you actually should measure ROI in different ways. If you're at crawl, your learnings and your ROI is probably learnings, building muscle, proving that the technology works. Once you're in walk, you're probably proving things like, well, this is actually valuable at a small scale. We should expand it to a larger scale. You're proving that your people can work together. You're proving that compliance, legal, HR won't be blockers, and that your operating model works. And then once you get to run, that is when you're really extracting transformative value, where a dollar that you put in, you could get 20 back, and you're actually changing the way that you actually do work. So crawl, that's AI as a task or a utility. A lot of you guys are here today, and that's okay, because you have to spend some time in crawl before you can get to walk. What walk looks like is, rather than now you're looking at AI as a task or a utility for a part of work, you're actually using AI to improve the work end to end. So you're engaging end-to-end programs, automating low value, you're automating low complexity work, and you're fitting this into critical business functions. And then finally, run is you're reimagining the work entirely, right? And we'll talk about what this looks like, but also at every stage, remember that while these are the focuses of AI, at every stage, your organization probably looks quite a bit different as well, right? At crawl, what that probably looks like is you have little, maybe not much governance at all. Maybe your innovation is decentralized. Maybe you have some light tool usage. Maybe you have a lot of blockers from a culture and organizational standpoint, right? And so even though you're automating tasks or portions of work, your company actually looks like it looks like a crawl maturity. Now, once you're in walk, you are improving end-to-end programs of work, and maybe here you look like you have some minimum compliance and minimum governance stood up. Your people know kind of how to work with each other. So product hands off to design, hands off to engineering. Your tools are a little bit more centralized. You have some large platforms that you can rely on rather than buying 10 different things. And then the capabilities that you're building, once you can build once and reuse multiple times, right? Once you're at run, you are fully federated. AI is centrally maintained, centrally built, but federated out for innovation. Your governance has multiple layers of security, compliance, and governance within it, so you can monitor risk and bias and drift, right? And so every stage of this, you're not just using the AI, but you're also transforming the organization. So with that said, okay, well, that seems easy, right? We should just think bigger. We shouldn't use AI as a task. We should just think of it bigger on transforming larger tracks of work. Not really, right? It's a lot harder than that. And here's the fundamental problem, is that before we do transformation, we actually have to distance ourselves from work-centric thinking. Now, the work that we do today is designed for humans, right? We're designed for, if it's a one-to-one human, I generally know what they're doing. They know what I'm doing. We can collaborate and we can kind of pivot quickly. Once you add another 100, once you add another 1,000, once you add another 100,000 people, work is designed for, out of those 100,000 people, someone's going to fat finger something and make a mistake. Someone is going to act maliciously. Someone might, be lazy one day and not put in as much diligence as they should. So work is designed around groups of humans, and it is also designed around flaws and strengths of what happens when humans group together and work together, right? That's what work is today. The problem with that is that when you look at a transformative technology like AI, And in the future, it's going to be quantum, right? And after that, who knows what's going to be? But the tech is going to change. But if you look at a transformative technology, is that um, uh, work that was designed for a human doesn't match the work that could happen if you actually started over and just looked at the outcome that you're trying to achieve, right? So the problem is that today we're a bit lost in the sauce of the work. And so if you hear, for example, at a lot of your companies, you may hear things like, hey, our call notes take too long. How do we could probably use AI to shorten the time that it takes us to take notes. Or, hey, we have every day we have a 50-page document that we have to walk through or read through and figure out, what this number is. So we should be able to do that faster. And so we're hyper focused on the work as a atomic piece of thing that you have to do, rather than thinking about the outcome that we're trying to achieve and then indexing for that instead. So the shift here is that in order to transform with AI or any tech for that matter, we actually have to distance ourselves from work-centric thinking, and we have to think about what it is that we're trying to do anyway, right? What is the outcome we need? How should we accomplish it if we had our choice? And then how can we continuously and do all of these things at the same time? The thing that we ask CEOs or C-suite buyers from us all the time is, if you have this organization today, you have the people organized and they're doing the work today. If you had unlimited money and time, would you spend it on, like, keep the lights on, shave off a few percent here, or would you fundamentally change the way that this is done, right? So we have to do a little bit of a shift. So let's walk through an example, right? Let's take a look at marketing. So fundamentally, and this is, this is a very, very high level kind of reductive view of marketing, but I think it's an illustrative point, is let's take marketing. Fundamentally, what happens in marketing? Well, we have to understand consumers. We have to identify our target customers. We have to reach them, sell to them in a way that resonates with them, and we have to get them to do something, right? And so generally today, marketing is fit into these core processes or these core buckets of work. In your company, it might look like there's different groups that do this. There's different owners that do this. There's different leaders and people that are accountable for each part of these tasks, right? So let's actually build this out, and let's articulate how that's different than the transformation that could be happening, right? So if you take a look at crawl, a crawl version of AI marketing looks a lot like this. If you take those fundamental buckets of work on the left, and then what you will probably hear if you went to your marketing team and you said, hey, we want you to just ideate and come up with a bunch of ideas for us, chances are you will get a big list that looks kind of like this. We do survey questions today, and so we should AI generate those surveys. Well, we have demographics, and so every new coming lead, we should rate them against those demographics. We have product descriptions. We should automatically generate product descriptions and put them on socials. Or we do 20 performance reports a month. We should automatically generate them. So you could see that this is very, very clearly is taking pieces of work that exist today and automating those pieces of work as they are today. But what we're doing is we're relieving a human from having to spend human time and human hours and human brain power on those things. But we're very, very clearly automating the work that exists today. Now, let's look at run. So in run, we are asking now, how do you automate the work that exists today, but how do you actually accomplish an outcome, right? And so what you'll notice is that if you want to accomplish an outcome, well, you can actually group some of these things together. You can merge and collapse these buckets of work where we say understand consumer behaviors and trends and identify customers. Well, really what that is continuous intelligence around the people that we talk to, right? And so you can continuously track what they actually do. And then you can, by that, you can pivot automatically on what you believe to be your target persona. You can also, if you can do that, you can also go pretty micro into the segmentation, figure out granular details of what is the difference between one persona and another, one customer and another. And you can do this almost near time, not quarterly persona refreshes or segmentation refreshes. Same thing with the next three. You can say reach targets, communicate value, and drive action. We can actually collapse that down into basically adaptive engagement. So everything is sort of continuous. The budgets are adjusted in real time based on what actually makes interaction, what actually gets impressions and interactions. Your messages and variations can be automatically generated and tested with different regions. And then your CTAs can also be sort of dynamically created and tested with different conversion paths. And so you can see that the crawl version of marketing work is fairly tactical. We're automating things that we do today, whereas the run version of this is we are actually accomplishing an outcome, and we're developing technology and work to accomplish that outcome rather than develop the work so that people can do it, right? So let's make this very, very real, and let's use an example because that always helps. Is that let's take a very, very large retail coffee chain, right? And so what run looks like for continuous intelligence is, let's say that it's continuously tracking what you buy, when, where, and what payment, and combined with the weather data, the traffic data, the local events, and everything is being tracked. Well, we can then say, we can identify micro segments. For example, iced coffee buyers who switch to hot drinks when the temperature drops below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry, I don't know what that is in Celsius for non-US people. Or let's say business travelers that always, when they're traveling, they add breakfast to their morning coffee because they have an expense account, right? And so you can identify these micro segments. And so your sort of continuous intelligence is always finding little people and their little parties and communities to be able to have an opportunity. And so then if you look at the adaptive engagement part of that, let's say tomorrow, because we've monitored weather data, is a cold front. We've noticed that a cold front is moving into town. And so that night we can say, hey, tomorrow's going to be cold. Your favorite iced latte, now hot, with 20% off breakfast pastries or something like that, right? Your call to action, we can test it, whether we schedule now and pre-schedule and pick up for tomorrow, or we can order first thing tomorrow morning. We can automatically test the words that resonate, whether it's warm up or cozy up or stay warm. We can automatically test the imaging to say maybe for the business traveler, pastries make more sense for them versus anyone else. That's a coffee that's hot and in a mug, right? We can automatically, because we've identified the micro segments and we've identified circumstantial or event-based triggers, we can test a bunch of things for those micro segments and then adjust those learnings based on the next time a cold front moves into town or the next time you travel for business, right? And so making it real really is about, if we didn't focus on the work on this first column of like, well, we have a report, we have to automatically generate the report, but instead we focus on the outcome of, I need to be able to sell more to people, and based on their needs and based on proactivity, then we can really start to transform the way that we think about work being broken down, people working with each other, and so on, right? I'll give you another one, and I'm not going to walk through the whole thing, but call support. Everyone has a service and support function. But really, this looks like if you can break down, understand what the caller wants, figure out how to solve their problem, route it to the right place, and then solve the problem. That's fundamentally the work. But you can actually collapse this so far into, let's say, a healthcare organization. There's no IVR, but when you call in, it says, tell me about your situation. And you give it a blurb for 30 seconds or a minute about what it is that you're encountering, what's the problem. You can tell it anything you want. But agentically, we can have an interpreter understand what you want. We can have a delegator delegate it to the right place, and then we can even fork it to an automation or a human. If we give it to a human, that human is fully equipped to be able to solve that problem with context, historical data, what we suggest in the policies and procedures, an answer they can actually give, and evidence for that answer, right? And so really, if you think about what we're trying to do, we're not trying to fix IVR. We're not trying to categorize calls. We're not trying to delegate better and fix rerouting. We're actually trying to get the person to the right place and solve their problem. And that is how you actually transform a function. So with that, Vincent is going to talk about this next section. And really, that's why. So, okay, this sounds pretty straightforward. So then why do programs fail before they can actually hit a maturity where they can transform? And the hint here is it's actually not the technology. So, Vincent, you wanna take over from here?
Yes, absolutely. So happy to take you through the next section on what AI leaders do differently. So if we move to the next slide, you see some snapshots of some of the things that we've been doing as VOI. Over the past several years, we've been working with a lot of leading organizations on helping them to identify that vision for AI and deploying it within these organizations. And what we did recently is actually trying to uncover patterns of what we see across multiple of those organizations. And lately, I've been spending some time in San Francisco to also explore some of the insights on really the front end of this innovation transformation that's going on, visiting the likes of NVIDIA and others. And I'll walk you through 5 main insights of what we've seen across a variety of organizations. So let's start with the first point, which is leaders believe that AI will reshape their industry and have a bold vision based on that conviction. It seems obvious and seems simple to think in, okay, we need to set out a vision for AI, yet it's not about setting that vision. I think by now everybody has AI somewhere in their annual report or in their ambition, yet it's about how you shape that vision and how transformative it is to your business. So if we move to the next slide, you'll see a little more with what we mean about that. First of all, we advise you to think beyond that short-term efficiency and really build an ambitious vision that really drives the change. So thinking of AI as a tool to optimize current workflows and to have people to work more efficiently is not really the long-term game. We've spoken a lot about the WAVE framework. So you see that on the top right. In previous webinars, you'll find more in-depth insight about that. But this is all about identifying a vision that connects to wave 2 and wave 3. So see it as a force that will really redefine how the industry operates. So the way that this influences how you operate as a business is quite fundamental, because if you set that ambitious vision, you really change the way on how you plan, invest, and lead the business. To give you one example, a case, we've been working for a leading global FMCG company, and they've identified that marketing isn't just about faster or more personalized content creation. It's actually about rethinking customer interaction in a world where digital agents reshape customer journeys, how information flows from the consumer to the brand and the brand to the consumer has completely shifted. So rethinking how the marketing teams should be organized, how investment should be done towards marketing, and again, how KPIs should be tracked. So if you move to the second insight, you'll see more patterns appearing that leaders move AI ownership out of IT into cross-functional steering groups. And I'll tell you a little more about that in the next slide. First of all, scaling AI really requires cross-functional power and not just technical isolation, where we've seen AI to initially be driven by one function, for example, IT. There's the real leaders move the ownership into a structure that really blends business and tech with shared accountability. So people from HR, from R&D, from marketing bring together their come together in steering groups to actually make decisions about KPIs, about the prioritization of value spaces, etc. So another example here is work we've done with the leading telco that created a cross-functional steering committee that really defines those priorities and tracks the KPIs specifically related to AI and the business impact associated to it. So not just focusing on pushing AI or expecting AI initiatives to be driven by IT, but actually setting up a separate group that reports directly into the CEO allows you to make more business-oriented decisions versus actually waiting for IT to come up with the answers to some of the business questions. Let's move to the next insight, which is the issue that many organizations have is that there's a bunch of use cases popping up, and it's hard to prioritize between one and the other. And so there's a large variety of use cases, and we've all read the report from MIT about some of the issues with actually the valorization of many of those use cases. And the key differentiators with leaders that actually see the impact of AI comes from a different setup. And I'll tell you a little more in the next slide, which is actually the prioritization of value spaces, not individual use cases. What we mean with that is that today, as I said, there's often a lot of scattered pilots across the organization, and then there's a rationalization exercise. We've read cases about companies only selecting 3 cases to be continued or to be heavily invested into, whereas what we've seen for successful organizations, they select domains of focus rather than prioritizing use cases. And the way that this is done is in 2 ways. On one hand, focused on outputs. For example, we're going to invest solely in customer experience and, I don't know, supply chain. Or the other way around, we think about enabling infrastructure. If we can uncover patterns across different use cases that rely on similar infrastructures. So again, an example here is a leading biotech company. They reprioritized all the different use cases by focusing on 5 main value spaces where they can add the most value to the business. So although one business unit might see a lot of value in use case A, B, or C, there's much more opportunity when we prioritize and we look at it as a business overall, and then select those cases within those domains. If we then move to the next one, we'll go to the 4th insight that we've uncovered, and that's about the focus on long-term value and taking into account second-order effects instead of focusing on short-term efficiency gains. So if we go to the next slide, we'll share a little more about it. So if we take the example of a customer service agent, we've seen a case where a leading telco has invested a lot in building agents that actually do customer support. Very interesting case. Very often you can find a lot of efficiencies in responding to requests much faster and actually more accurate as well, to be much more personalized according to the needs of individual customers. But the problem is customer service is often also the touch point that you have with customers to do upsell. And therefore, you could see that the value and the upsell actually dropped. So the turnaround was when they actually said, okay, we're going to really build those agents with the purpose of upsell and growth rather than faster response rates. And we're going to have human interaction, but with deep support of agents that also coach them on commercial growth. And that's when actually the unlock happened. So if initially the vision would have been said that customer service can drive more growth for the business and AI should enable this, that might have been avoided. So these are ways that you can rethink again the prioritization of those domains. And then we move into the 5th and last insight, which is, and maybe before I do that, actually, one of the additional values about identifying those value spaces, and by thinking into outcome-based prioritization, is that you can act as a flywheel. So if you take multiple use cases within one domain, they each can add value to each other when they act. So for example, they can all contribute to the same business objective and can rely on similar infrastructure. So the similar data sources can rely on similar types of agents or use similar interfaces. And by building each of those use cases, they can act as a flywheel so that each cycle of improvement, so one case becomes very successful, that can actually lead to a better outcome for another agent or another use case, which is an interesting way to look at a system as a flywheel instead of one individual use case. And then finally, the 5th learning is investment in the foundations, not just in the front end. You can see a lot of shiny chatbots of a lot of solutions out there that are fancy, yet not really contributing to your business growth in the long term. And therefore, we highly recommend you to modernize your foundations before scaling some front end solutions. So what we see amongst leaders is that they invest in shared and trusted data and reliable pipelines, that they strengthen their governance, security, and infrastructure, and that they have scalable compute and integration layers connected to their core systems. So these are often the invisible foundations, but they really decide whether AI moves from pilots to scaled impact. So with that, I'll summarize the 5 insights that we've seen among those learnings before I hand it back over to John. So first off is the governance structure. So if you click through, John, is building that transformative AI vision. And as a second is creating that cross-functional governance. Third is prioritizing business-focused value spaces instead of individual use cases, then creating a future-back roadmap of activities, and finally, invest in structural enablers instead of only focusing on the shiny front end. So, John, I'll hand it back over to you. And maybe before I do that, one of the interesting insights, if you feel if you feel stressed that you might be missing out on the whole AI transformation, last week when I was at NVIDIA, there was a very interesting statement made by leaders in the company about when should we start, and often the answer is yesterday, right? So, but if yesterday was the best time to start, today is really the second best. Because if you now start training your own models, if you start really building agent systems that can help customer service or different parts of the business, you will continue to grow and improve that flywheel. A flywheel continues to improve its performance by going through each of those cycles. So if you start now, you'll be able to have hundreds of those cycles within a year from now, versus if you start in a year from now, you wouldn't have the time to actually go through all those iteration cycles. It's not a software build, it's really a flywheel system. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, John.
This is a quote to live by the way. This is like not just for AI, but it's also like, you know, if you want to start going to the gym, if you want to learn a new language, if you want to, whatever it is that you want to do. If yesterday was the best day, today's the second best. So this is great. So let's talk quickly about how to start, right? Because I think, and there's also some fantastic questions. I want to leave a little bit of time at the end so we can answer these questions. So number one, identify where you are in the maturity. This is important. No matter what, we want to mature and we want to transform. But depending on where you are on this journey, you have homework to do. If you are early in crawl, it will be very, very difficult without the right homework done on building the foundations of leadership, culture, value realization, organizational fluency, organizational velocity. You have some homework to do. And so crawl is you have homework to do on the organization. Or we should call it actually like cultural buy-in as the main homework in crawl. If you're an early work, finish what you started. You've probably started a few POCs, you probably started a few experiments. Prove that those things are valuable, prove that those things are increasing in value, and then with what you've done, what you've learned, create the foundations for repeatability, reusability, and scalability. And then finally is that if you're here, if you're at like kind of like ladder walk, just scale what's worked. Make sure that if you've transformed one function, reuse the foundations that you've successfully hit earlier and walk with one function, and distribute that out to other functions. Build your internal capabilities and then continuously optimize. So as you move along this curve, you can see that the curve it's not linear, right? Like the walk is the hard work. The slope is the highest in walk. This is the hardest work here. Most companies are sort of like leaving crawl, getting into walk, or they're stuck in early walk because that slope is so high. And that's because that the earlier you are, the more organizational work that you will have to do with the people. as you move a long walk, then you have to start creating foundations of logistics and operations and operating model. And then later on, you really need to sort of like nail down the value and the degree of change in which you're trying to create, right? And so number one, figure out where you are, because depending on where you are, you will have different types of work to do to actually move along this curve. Number two is once you're there, pick a domain that has priority, that has value. Again, don't over-index on the work. Remember the outcome that you're trying to accomplish, right? And so pick a domain where you have clear, measurable business opportunity. So if it's like, well, we have a claims process that we might be able to shave 10% of cost off of, or 10% of timing off of, that's not a big transformation, right? That's a keep the lights on, small adjustment. So find something that actually has a clear, measurable, transformative business opportunity. Number two, the leaders are there and they're willing to design work. So, someone just said in the comments, I think it was Marco, it's a culture transformation rather than a tech one. Absolutely. If your leaders are willing to be bold, just like Vincent said, if your leaders are willing to bold, then you can actually redesign the work. If your leaders in that function are resistant, this is how we've always done it, this is how we do it today, let's focus on the 10 people that I have here and how do we make that 9, that is not a good function to focus on. Number three, very similar, is manage your friction. So the functions that you pick, if they are, for example, handling heavy PHI, if they are heavily HIPAA locked, if they are heavy financial information, if there's heavy audit desire from like the government, like these are places where friction is unmanageable for your first transformation. Prove your value elsewhere, otherwise you will never prove any value. And then in bonus is that in parallel is that if you build something that has sight to other parts of the organization, even better. I'll give you an example. Call support transformation. If you focus on call support transformation, you are also building the muscle for any place that has a call. So you and me, when we have a one-on-one meeting, that's a call. Sales has calls. Claims sometimes has calls. Call support has calls. Internal IT support, that has calls. And so if you can pick something that has high reusability, because fundamentally the work pattern is very similar, then you get your bonus, right? And so take a look at these, your domains, pick things that have opportunity, that have velocity, that aren't held back by friction. And if you can get it to be foundational and form something that you can build off of, even better. Avoid heavy compliance, heavy governance constraints, and also avoid places with heavy reliance and cross-functional dependency for your first transformation until you build organizational memory and muscle memory around moving as an organization, right? This is things like, if I want to take on a transformation, but Bob, who owns the data, doesn't want to give me the data, or legal hasn't decided on their legal rules for AI, and so we have to redo it every time. But if there's or let's say like I want to talk to product, but product has their own roadmap and they plan a year ahead and they can't really pivot their roadmap, is that if you have heavy reliance on other cross-functional teams for your first function, this transformation, you're going to lose momentum, and it'll be your sort of like sight on value will be much further away, right? And so pick a good first transformation that has the way cleared and has the mandate to move. So that's step 2. Step 3, follow this approach, right? Vincent, do you have anything else to say on this one?
No. Maybe really quickly, again, a reminder that leaders believe that AI will really reshape their industry. It's not just an augmentation of what you do. Second, they move the ownership out of IT. So make sure you have, for example, a steerco or a center of excellence on the topic of AI. Then prioritize those value spaces around outcomes or shared infrastructure, not just selecting the use cases that you believe bring the most value. Think of multiple use cases combined as a value space. And then focus on long-term value. I've seen an interesting question about the idea on how the crawl, walk, and run maturity curves align with this mindset of longer term focus. I think activities can be on the shorter term. They can be in the bucket of crawl and walk, yet the vision should always be in that longer run. So identifying a vision that really is transformative to your business, and then take gradual steps towards that. And then finally, invest into the foundations. So the pilots won't ever scale if the data foundations are not there. So make sure that's also put in place.
So your first 90 days, right, is that you want to start on this, and you want to actually start some transformation with AI to make it valuable, make it sort of earn the right to continue. Your first 90 days kind of looks like this, and we'll actually go a little bit further beyond 90 days. But week 2, align your vision. So find the leaders that can give you air cover, that have the mandate to move, that have the interest to and the commitment to transform. Build your aligned vision with them and get their commitments. Week 3 to 5, do your discovery. So you've picked a leader, you've picked a function that is high priority, has the mandate to move. Do your discovery and hypothesis. So do what we did earlier with marketing and call support. Map out the fundamental work that you do today. Identify what originally that work was meant to achieve so that you can optimize it, and then hypothesize how you bridge that gap, right? Like, what is the actual 5-year plus or you in 5 years when you index for outcomes, when you figure out what transformation looks like for whatever function that you picked, and then map out where there might be blockers. Week 6 to 8, prove the value. So start by building something that you're not going to be held back on. Lean on your air cover that you've established in week 1 and 2, clear the path, and prove that this has transformative potential against real success metrics, right? Most companies lost discipline on measuring for success. They dumped a bunch of money on tech rather than use the tech to accomplish an outcome. And so prove quick value. And then after that, plan for scale, right? Test it with real teams. And then really, you can see that there's a common thread throughout here where 80% of these bullet points are actually organizational and operating model based to-dos, whereas the tech is like one of these bullets out of every single column. That's by design. The by far the thing that will hold you back the most on transformation is the people that don't want it to transform or want to hold it back. So you'll see that there's that common thread. A lot of this, as you build from week 1 to week 12, is getting better and better, and then being more institutional about the way that you break down organizational barriers to get to a transformative mindset, so you can actually make happen what you want to happen. So now we should take some questions, I think. But I think after this, we'll keep this up on the slide. But after this, you'll get the slides, you'll get an AI Transformation Learnings article, and then the second is that we're here to help. Right? Is that we can help you with your transformative roadmap. What that typically looks like for us is a 3-week strategic track, and what that'll let you do is it'll let you be bold without being unsafe. I think there for the past month or a couple months, there's been a big mix of it's either people that have invested money and then are a little bit nervous because it hasn't entirely played out like MIT says, or it's people that have invested money and it's not moving fast enough, or it's that you're new to the role and you're a little bit nervous about what can I actually do without ruffling feathers, without feeling like I'm wasting money or time, and so these are. There's a bit of a split between bold and safe, but they don't have to be separate. And so that's what we help a lot with. We're here to help. So reach out to me, reach out to Vincent, and we're happy to talk about how do we get you on some kind of a strategic track of a transformation roadmap, and also build it and help you prove the value so that you can earn the right to continue. Right. Third, we have Autonomous Web Summit coming up. Sign up for that. We'll send you the link. Definitely sign up for that, and we'll see you there. But let's take some questions.
Go ahead. quickly select a question. So, for example, there was a question on, let me go through it. Actually, related to the starting point of this webinar, a question from Vincent on should the crawl, walk, run cycle be followed in sequence for each individual use case? Curious about your point on that, John.
Yeah, it's a really really good question, and uh, Vincent asked that. Looks like they need to be in sequence. Well, so no, I should say that they need to be touched upon, but they don't have to be in sequence. You can do some of it in parallel, right? Depending on what you're doing. So, for example, one of the most common things that we do is we will meet a client or prospective clients that wants to accomplish two things at the same time because they're starting on this journey. They want to do something important that can prove value, and they want to do it right. That is a parallel track where we're starting on sort of like early walk of prove the value, but we're also tackling crawl at the same time to do it right and establish the foundations of organizational readiness, right? So they all have to be touched on and they all have to be thought through, but they don't have to be perfectly in sequence. A lot of it can happen in parallel, which is actually what we recommend because at this point, if you're starting now, you're a second mover, and it's now it's time to take advantage of second mover advantage, right? Is that if you're not taking if you haven't been a leader and you haven't been a first mover, but you're still not doing it, then you're just waiting. So that is actually what we do recommend.
Maybe another question that I saw is a question from Nicole on the fact that she shared that she likes the idea of outcome or customer focus on the clustering of opportunities. The question is one way to get there to conduct a journey mapping? And I'll kick it off maybe first with my point of view on this. It's a very good point. I think it's a good idea to use customer journey mapping for this and potentially cluster use cases on parts of the journey that you believe are under pressure or where you should make advancements. Yet, I think a journey mapping is potentially a risky way to do this because today we see in many domains agents actually disrupting the customer journey, and therefore certain steps might be skipped or the journey might look completely different. And therefore, let's say that I'll give you a simple example. If you have a typical customer journey and you want to create awareness about your product or service, and therefore with AI, actually, you want to create more content, more personalized, and really talk to as many people as possible. That's great. And therefore, if you would do that journey mapping, you could say, how do we use AI to automate marketing and communication? Whereas you could argue that in that new world where agents are actually representing individuals, where AI is actually being the representation of individuals in their purchase behavior, for example, shopping through ChatGPT, it won't be improved by having more personalized content. So if you focus on that step of awareness building, you won't actually progress with the end outcome, which is increasing purchase. So I would always take an actual business outcome as a starting point of those clusters, as maybe the journey might be the old journey and not the one that will be future proof. And that's one part. And maybe one quick thought about it as well is that it doesn't only have to be customer facing. You can also cluster initiatives based on shared infrastructure or connectivity from a technology standpoint. What if multiple use cases rely on a similar data set or a similar set of agents? Then you could actually select multiple use cases within a domain of, I don't know, market intelligence or, I don't know, any other part of the business. Business processes, supply chain. It doesn't always have to be a core business outcome. It can also be an infrastructure cluster. Any
I
thoughts before we go ahead,
Yeah,
John?
I think it's such a good point. Is that like I would say, yeah, customer journey is fantastic. Also, if you can do it right? Because like you could also focus too much on the work within a customer journey map. right? Or like you could talk to a customer and the customer could talk at a far too granular level and talk about like, well, I like to go to this website, I like to whatever. It's important that you could still miss the point, is that if you didn't figure out, well, at the end of the day, what is the customer trying to do? They're trying to make a purchase of something they like. You are trying to sell them something that they like at a price they like, right? Like you could customer journey mapping, fantastic. Still focus on the underlying outcome, not the work that either they are going through from an experience standpoint or the work that you're doing from a work standpoint.
Maybe picking another question. There's a recent one that just came in from Wim. What are the minimal must-have roles for enabling and delivering AI solutions in an organization in that walk phase? Any thoughts about that, John?
Yeah, and I'll actually link this with another question that I think someone asked. So this, yes. So this was, what are the minimal must-have roles? And then also Pinar asked, should there be an AI organization, right? And so I think these two questions are linked. So the way that you as an organization organize around AI is actually incredibly important. These days, probably the easiest way to get that done is an AI organization. In 5 years, in 8 years from now, maybe that doesn't exist, but right now it is probably the most straightforward, clear mandate way to have AI initiatives move forward with a leader and and one place to give air cover to. I would suggest, these days you probably need an AI organization. Maybe that's not the case in the future. Kind of like how for a long time companies were hiring chief digital officers, and then digital got absorbed into product and IT and strategy over time. Right. And I think AI could very much be similar, is that right now you have CAIOs. We've actually like 3x'd the number of CAIOs in the last like 2 years. That is a very important title these days because it's one person that can lead the charge. In a few years, that may not happen. Now, what do you must have to deliver AI solutions? You have to build that organization, right? So that organization is, and that's a fairly large way of building that organization as well. You need that organization is responsible for really two things. One is protecting the organization from the risks of AI. And then number two is enabling the organization with the things that AI can accomplish. That's what that organization is responsible for. So your must-have roles need to be on both, or you need to have the people that need to be able to suss out both sides of that world in that organization. That doesn't mean that organization needs to be fully centralized, where that's all it does and no one else can touch it. It just means that you have one place where you're owning the outcomes of AI progress, and so that they can work with the different leaders to make that happen, right? So must-have roles is probably best answered by, you need to build the organization and have the organization both be a protection function and enabling function. Fill in the blanks from there.
Great. I see we're almost at time, so wondering if you, John, want to take a final question that you definitely want to answer, or whether we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, I saw one that had a bunch of votes. Would crawl be prompting only, and would walk be AI agents on existing processes? So I will clarify here that crawl, walk, and run, that is an organizational readiness measure. As an organization, you'll find that like in a lot of these organizations, even if they're crawl, which means they have no governance, they have no change management, they have no value tracking, they have no anything. All they have, but they do have like pockets of like incredible innovation. They have a person that has like built his own MCP server, trained his own model. Everything connects to everything. You have these like amazing bits of talent and tech that exist in the organization, but the organization is still at crawl because there's so much that holds the tech back. So crawl versus walk versus run, that is an organizational readiness and how fast you can move with AI as an organization. The tech varies, right? You could start if you're on crawl today, we could start with agentic builds today. The work that we would do on an organizational standpoint to get you to walk would be organizational. It'd be governance, it'd be change management, it'd be air cover, it would be value tracking, it would be governance, control towers, it would be all of that, right? So split those things up. It's the organization versus the tech. The goal is to get the organization to move as fast as the tech.
All right.
I think that's my last one.
Great. Then we're ready to wrap up today's webinar. As said, since you've subscribed for this webinar, you'll get the slides and also a link to the AI Transformation Learnings article. Do reach out to us if you want to have support on building your AI transformation roadmap. We can do that efficiently with you to make sure that you learn from leaders in the industry and that we help you to be bold without being unsafe. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to Autonomous, the largest summit for AI innovators out there. 70 leaders in the industry will share their perspectives, and it's on December 3rd and 4th, so hope you can join us there. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.